This dynamic duo is the authority on taking the overwhelm out of leading a healthy lifestyle. Champion you to build a foundation for health, happiness, and success. They are leading a revolution on physical, nutritional, and emotional empowerment, helping you find a balance between work, family, and self. They strive to maximize your personal success, overcome your challenges, transform your body, increase your energy, attain your goals, and focus on overall wellness so you can feel consistently better about yourself and can perform better in all aspects of your life. Let's take the overwhelm out and achieve balance through physical, nutritional, and emotional awareness. Introducing renowned health strategists, life trainers, global speakers, authors, coaches, entrepreneurs, motivators, the one and only powerhouse couple, Craig and Jenny D.
Right, we're going live to the US this morning, to the guys. Hope it's warmer there where it is than it is here.
Good morning, David.
Morning, guys. How are you?
Doing great. How are you?
How are you doing?
Fantastic. If you'd seen me this morning, if the listeners won't have a clue about this, will they? But yesterday, you sent me that course that I'm going to go on.
Yep.
I'm going to put myself through hell. I've been on my weights.
You're going to do amazing.
I've been on the weights already. I can't lift my arms now. I forgot about lifting my weights up first thing in the morning. My arms won't work. I'm trying to press buttons.
Don't drop any weights on your head, David. It's a bad thing.
Oh, no, I won't feel it. Trust me. There's no feeling there.
Oh, well, we are so excited to be here this morning. Boy, I already have the ginger tea brewing in the kitchen, so we're ready to go for the day.
Oh, lovely. Right, get a brew on for me. I've gone through 3 about this morning, I think.
Nice.
I can hear it in your voice. You sound amazing.
I know. Oh, well, I've got dulcet tones. When I want to sound good, I sound amazing. When I sound like, an old crooner, then I'll be worth a few quid then.
Well, I'll tell you what, we are, this morning, we have got an amazing guest that's going to be coming on. I assume that you've been talking to Bron already here this morning,
yeah,
huh?
We have, yeah. She said good day to me in Australia. It must be daft o'clock at night there, is it?
Yeah,
it is, yeah.
Yeah, so she's, it's 10 o'clock at night over there with her, but I'll tell you what, we met Bron. Believe it or not, we met her in November of 2016 out in Los Angeles. We were out there interviewing Al Pacino.
Right.
Of all things.
Like you do.
And we met her that evening at this event. And I'll tell you what, from the moment we met her, we went after she was up on stage doing her presentation. I went up and I found her and I'm like, we have got to work with you. And she has an amazing story that she's going to share with everybody this morning. And what she does is, I won't get much into it, but she takes people's backstories, stuff that happened to us when we were young as a child, and she takes it from something that's holding us back and has us chained in our past and turns it into our superpower. And so we are so excited to bring her on. If you want to get her on the line now, we can just get started because we probably have enough information with her to fill about 3 radio shows.
Flipping it, you will do that to me, won't you? Right, hold on. We'll get... I thought, let me find her now. Let me find her. I hope it's warmer in Australia this morning. It's their summer now, isn't it? You don't cut yourself off.
It's her summer now.
Yeah, that was it. Yeah, I remember thinking it to myself. It was because there was a question on the TV the other day. When's the longest day of the year in Australia? And it was December.
Wow. Yeah. Good morning, Bron.
Good morning, Bron.
Well, I could say good evening.
Oh, good evening. That's right. Good evening for you. We're still waking up over here.
I know. And I hope, well, it's very warm over here. We've had a very hot summer's day, so it's probably cooler where you are.
Oh, don't rub it in. Flipping it. I'm sat here with 15 layers of clothes on trying to keep warm at the moment.
We had the air conditioner on trying to keep cool.
That's funny. David told us that yesterday he was out building a snowman. So he's got a little snow there this morning. We've got ice coming down here. So I think you win this.
I think I do.
Well, we want to thank you for coming on. I know it's late over there, Bron, but we needed to get you on the show because I was just telling all of our listeners how, from the moment we met you out in Los Angeles back in November of 2016, when we were out there with Al Pacino and we saw you present, and how we came up to you right afterwards, and we just knew that we had to work with you and get you, as part of our team. And we're so excited to have you. And so I gave the listeners kind of a brief rundown here of who you are and what you do, but I'm going to turn it really over to you because I want you to talk to them about where this whole concept of a backstory came from. I explained to them that, you take somebody's backstory and you really take what is holding them back in their past and has them kind of bound in these chains to their past, and then you turn it into a superpower for them. So where did this concept come from?
For me, it's been a long time in the making, probably a lifetime in many ways, because I grew up with watching movies with my dad, just Saturday afternoons. And backstory is actually a concept from the film industry. And it refers to the story, the story behind the story. So it's, an actor walks onto stage and there is already something that the actor knows something about the character that the audience doesn't know. And we might find that out little bit by little bit, or we might find it out all in one go. But initially, we don't know what their backstory is. We don't know what the background to their life has been. But that backstory actually influences the way that character plays out through the plot. And I came to understand that it's not actually just characters in fictional settings, but people actually have backstories too. The sum total of our lives, even from before we're born, we have a backstory that impacts us, and we have a variety of them, a whole lot of different areas.
Wow. And, how ironic that we met you when we were out there in LA with Al Pacino, and all this comes from the movie industry.
Absolutely. And Los Angeles, being on the same stage as Al Pacino, is the ideal place to present my backstory consultancy, my coaching, and just letting people know that, yes, backstories inform how we live, how we act, the decisions that we make, but we can actually change the stories. We can take those same events and reframe them, or as I like to call it, rearrange the furniture, so that we then tell ourselves a different story about those particular life events.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. I love the way you talk. I love the way you position that.
I love her accent too.
I'm going to say, yes, her accent too, yes. But I really do, because it is, because you make thinking about your backstory, thinking about your past, just completely different. Even about just, really rearranging furniture. How, you make it very simple. And that is, and in the way your voice is, and in your accent, just like Jenny said, it's very soothing. How you do that, and I think it's very intriguing. And now, so one of the questions I've got for you is, whenever we're taking a look at your backstory, what was the turning point for you in your own personal backstory, Bron?
Well, it was something that was probably was then and is still a little controversial in Australia. In about 2012, the Australian government decided to go back into offshore processing of asylum seekers, and they had agreements both with the Papua New Guinea government for use of Manus Island and the Nauruan government for the Republic of Nauru. And I put up my hand to work with the Salvation Army. I was working with them at the time, and to volunteer there, not because I had a burning desire to work with asylum seekers and refugees, but really because I couldn't think of any other reason why not to. But that work thrust me into situations where I discovered things about myself. And on the very first day, as we're, we've had this long day of orientation and our eyes are just about hanging out of our heads. We're so tired. The last thing we did was to walk down into the camp, and the men were being housed in Green Army tents at that stage, and we were going around in groups. And, look, it's hot, it's humid. Nauru is only 35 kilometres south of the equator. It's like 80% humidity all the time, so nobody's doing much. But so the men who were there were not aggressive, they weren't even being assertive, but I felt this little sense of fear bubbling up in me. Yeah, it was totally unexpected. And as I reflected on that, I realised that fear came from the fact that these men were different to me. They were a different skin colour, different races, different religions, different languages. And I wouldn't have said that I had a racist bone in my body.
Right.
Because even though I'd been brought up in a very white, monocultural part of Sydney, I'd been brought up to be respectful and tolerant and, to get along well with people. So it really surprised me that I had this fear of people who were different to me, and I realised that I actually did have this latent racism. And then secondly, I know, it's huge. It was really quite shocking for me. It was not how I saw myself.
Yeah,
And then
Oh, go ahead, Bron.
Yeah, no. And the other thing was, working with the Nauruan locals, I realised that those of us who are expats, and I find this interesting that I'm on expat radio, but those of us who are expats, we came from a developed nation, whereas Nauru is like an underdeveloped nation.
Right.
Most of us had travelled overseas. Most Nauruans do not travel outside their little tiny island. Some of them don't even have a really good grasp of English. They speak mostly Nauruan. They're not university educated like I am and many of the other expats were. So there was this sense of superiority amongst the white people on the team. And I was quite shocked again to realise that I felt that way. And when I spoke to Fatima, who headed up the Nauruan team, and talked to her about that, she said, oh, yeah, we know, but we know that's just the way you guys are. And I was just horrified.
Wow, I would be too. Yes.
Yeah. So there were these two things, this whole idea of maybe I had this latent racism and this sense of superiority. And it was a wake-up call for me because these were in my background because of where I was raised and how I was raised. But I had to...
Well, and Bron, I'm going to have you actually hold right there, just like the movie industry. We're going to leave everybody on a cliffhanger to find out what happened next with you and what you did about it while we go to our first song. So we're going to take a quick music break here. We've got Troy Sivan with My, My, My.
Oh, God, is that? What a great song that is. Troy Sivan. My, my, my. You're on the all-day special on Expat Radio with Craig and Jenny D this morning. With our special guest, Bron Williams, out in Australia. Unbelievable. Just after clock at night there still. Right, we're back live with the guys now.
Here.
Yeah, we got the crocodile hunter still on the line. There you go. And she's going to take everybody's backstory away.
Exactly. I wouldn't go out in the dark round there if you got one of those knocking about. Well, Alpha, the thing is, if you have bad weather, they were saying that there've been floods in Australia over the last couple of days, haven't there? You there, Bron?
Have there been floods out there, Bron?
I haven't heard of floods, but I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't actually listened to the radio or the news in the last couple of days because I was on a lovely long motorbike ride.
Oh, so well, there you go. That's why you don't know what's happening in the world, girl. I'm thinking I'm making this up as I go along here. You'll be worried to death. I'm just thinking with the floods that you have over there, the creeks overflow, don't they? So the gators decide, we'll go for a walk, and they end up in people's gardens and all sorts.
Wow. What you don't... What you don't know about Bron, David, is that she works with people on their backstories, but in between, she can do this from anywhere in the world, and so she lives quite an adventurous life. We see pictures of her all over the place. This lady doesn't sit still for more than 5 minutes at a time.
No,
she is always out doing something adventurous, and we love watching it. It's amazing the energy that this woman has. She gives us a run for our money.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So just so those of you that are just tuning in, we've got Bron Williams with us from Australia, and she is the founder of Backstory Consultancy. And we were just talking before we went to the music break there about Bron's backstory and what the turning point for her was in realizing that she actually had a backstory that was influencing how she was responding and reacting to situations in her present life. And so this becomes so important because when we can own that backstory, then we can change it, as she referred to earlier in the show, as moving the furniture around, right, in our mind. And that just is such a great visual for me. We're just moving the furniture around, positioning it differently, and so that you can turn it into your superpower. So, Bron, let's pick up right where we left off with really in your turning point when you realized, that you had been raised differently than the people in the other nation and that was more underdeveloped, and how that really influenced you and how you turned things around.
Yep. Yeah, so heading, I suppose, like so often happens when we're taken out of one very familiar environment, we're put into something else. We can be confronted by things that we didn't know were part of our personality. And for me, it was the two things of having a latent racism and also having this sense of superiority. And when I took those on board and owned them as my own, I started to see that difference was an asset, wasn't something to be afraid of. And I really embraced diversity. And I found from that time on, as I continued to work on Nauru in a multicultural, multi-faith, multilingual team, that I just loved working with people from different languages. Where I would sit at my desk in the office, there were, I was right in the middle of the Nauruan staff, but on the other side of the little divider, there were people from Iran and Iraq and Sri Lanka, from Vietnam, and there was all these languages swirling around me. And although my role working with the Salvation Army was as the religious liaison officer, and I come from a Christian background, my role was to make sure that the religious needs of all the asylum seekers were met. So it was my job to make sure that the Muslims and the Buddhists and the Hindus, the Zoroastrians, as well as the Christians, had as much as they could of their religious paraphernalia, their services, because that was really good for their mental health. And so I was working with Muslims on the team. I was working with Hindus and Buddhists. And it was a wonderful, wonderful experience of starting to see how often the commonalities between our religions, but also this desire to work together. And I just loved it. It was life-changing. It was transformative. I felt a bit like, the TARDIS from Doctor Who. Yeah. It looks like this telephone box on the outside, but inside it's this huge time machine. That's exactly what I felt like.
And it's interesting.
It still looked like Bron.
It's interesting to say this, Bron, because so many times in our world, I feel like we always focus on the differences between people, right? Like you were talking about the different religions, the different races, the different colors of skin, all of these differences. But when we get down to it, just like you said, when you were working in this situation, what you realized was the commonalities between everybody. And if as a world we could begin to focus more on these commonalities that we all have versus the differences,
absolutely,
it can bring us all together so much more because we're all humans. We all have a beating heart inside of us. We all love. We all feel. We all have a brain. We all breathe the same air.
Yeah. Most of us have brains.
Most of us do.
Yeah.
But that realization that, my goodness, there really aren't that many differences. There are more commonalities in so many ways than there are differences. And if we could focus on that and the beauty of all of that,
Yeah, I mean, Jenny, I mean, I think you really hit it. I mean, and Bron, I mean, just the story that you had. I mean, really, I mean, tuning in and saying, listen, it doesn't matter who I am, who anybody else is out there. I mean, everybody is just so important, and I love that story. It's very heartwarming. And, so when we're taking a look, let me ask you a question. When we're taking a look at, the backstory, I mean, what are really some of the benefits of owning your own past? What are those benefits?
Oh, look, the benefits are that any guilt or shame, these are huge, but any guilt or shame that's been connected with your past events, it just disappears. Because it's like when I first came to understand this concept of owning the past, it was through the wonderful Brené Brown from the United States, where she said that the most courageous thing we can do in our life is to own our own story and love ourselves through the process. And I was just struck by her words of owning our story. And I did a process for myself of owning some stuff from the past. It was not just that I knew the stuff from my past, but I had to say, this is mine.
Right.
Like it was my child, to hold it to my chest and nurse it and say, this is mine. And once we own something in that way, no one can say anything to us about that. No one can lay guilt on us. No one can shame us. We can't shame ourselves. The guilt and the shame about those experiences, especially those negative ones, or less positive ones, just disappears because we just go, it's my story.
Right.
It's okay. It may not be a pleasant story, but it's mine.
Well, it's true. I mean, it's like some stories, as we all know, are not as pleasant as others. And when we look at our backstory, even personally for me, I look at my backstory and I was like, I lived a pretty nice life with my parents, but there are still parts of it that I go back into, and it's amazing, how I can rearrange my own furniture. And some people have, I'm sure, some horrific backstories that they need to change. And so when we're looking at, these types of people and their backstories, I mean, what do you do with them? How do you talk to them to get their backstory and to help them out?
Well, first of all, the first biggest thing is to listen, but not just to listen to the words, but listen behind the words too, because so often people will tell you their stories, but it's not until you ask questions, because questioning is part of listening. You ask questions about, what did you tell yourself out of that situation? How were you feeling in that situation? And often someone will make a comment just by chance, almost as a throwaway comment, but it is so key. They might say things like, if only I could have, or if I had, or why wasn't I? And they're these just little stories that where they've taken responsibility for something that wasn't theirs to take responsibility for, where they have interpreted a life event as being somehow their responsibility to have changed or to have stopped. And, so often these quite life-defining events happen when we're children and we don't have the cognitive abilities to reason our way through them. Even as adults, we personalise just about everything that happens to us, and we take responsibility for some. So,
Sure we do.
What hope has a child have? And so it's just part of that process of listening, of asking questions, and of hearing what people are telling themselves and have been telling themselves, maybe for decades. And that's where we go to. It's so often not necessarily the event, but it's what are the stories that have come out of that event that you've been telling yourself.
you were talking, just a moment ago here about taking responsibility for things that weren't yours to take responsibility for, but also taking responsibility for those things that are yours to take responsibility for. And I remember going through this process with you because early on, that was one of the things Craig and I said, hey, we're just intrigued by what you're doing. We want to work with you and take us through the process. And I will never forget, I can still see in my head exactly where I was sitting in the parking lot in my car, what exactly I was even wearing, Bron. I know I can see it so vividly when you and I were going through my own backstory, and you were taking very specific situations that I went through as a young child and repositioning those in my mind to help me release that responsibility that I felt in those situations. And that has been so powerful in my life, and it literally has completely transformed the relationships with the people that were involved in those situations in my life. And I really want people listening to understand the power of this, because I had certain relationships in my life from very early in my childhood that were troubled relationships, and the going through this process and reframing those stories so that I
rearranging the furniture.
That's exactly so that I could take responsibility for the pieces that were mine, but I could give them the responsibility for the pieces that were theirs, and it has completely transformed those relationships.
Yeah. So on that note, Jenny, what we're going to do is we're going to go to our second song. It's by Train, Soul Sister.
Right, we're back live with the guys this morning.
All right, David, how you doing?
I'm keeping warm. I'm running on the spot and doing my fitness workout while you two are having a chat with Bron Win there.
I love it.
He's right on the program. We just started David on our new program, Up Level Your Resolution, yesterday, and he's already on it. I'm loving it, David. I can't wait to see your results, and I'm sure people all over the world are going to be looking in to watch you succeed on this.
Yeah. Will this make my hair grow back, by the way? Because if this goes
about that, but this could be a good test. You want to know if his hair's going to grow back.
Oh, if your hair will grow back.
The only side effect.
Promise that one. Hey, nobody will be looking at your head. They're going to be looking at your muscles.
Oh no! Hey, you want to see these guns? If this grows back, it'll be a wonder. It'll be a wonder miracle. I'm telling you. If we can get that coming back as well.
Maybe Bron can help you with that. Maybe we can do something with your backstory that makes your hair grow back. What do you think, Bron?
Oh, please. I'm not going to go there.
Well, hey, everybody,
if I could do that, I'd do it for my sons. I've got two sons with receding hairlines. So, yeah.
That's funny. Well, maybe we can figure that magic out on another call, David. But anyway, for those of you that are just joining us, we have the delightful Bron Williams with us from Australia this morning. We were just talking on the break about it's just amazing to have us over here in Philadelphia and Bron over in Australia and David in France all together here this morning or this evening, late at night for Bron. And we are talking about owning your backstory. And Bron has an amazing business called Backstory Consultancy, and she takes people's backstory and helps them turn it into their superpower. And that's right where we want to pick up, Bron, is, what about your backstory? And what was that process that you went through to really own your backstory and to find your superpower? And what is that?
Okay. Well, like many people, I'm divorced, but I come from a very strong conservative Christian background, and so to get to that point was a huge journey for me, and it was quite devastating in many ways. Like most people, you expect to be married forever. And it doesn't happen, and for whatever reason. And not only am I divorced, but I'm the one who left the marriage. I left my husband because I needed to. It was really important that I do that for my own health and safety. However, I bore that responsibility and the brunt of that on myself.
Absolutely. It wasn't something that was accepted generally.
No, it wasn't. And there was, including family, not quite sure what to do with me. People weren't unkind, but they just didn't know what to do. And I knew I was divorced. You know, it's not one of those things you can't know, but I don't actually think I'd ever owned it until probably 6 or 7 years after the divorce was finalised.
Mm-hmm.
And it was through that time when I first came across that quote from Brené Brown. I was at a women's retreat and I realised that I needed to own my story. And that part of that included the divorce. And I literally wrote it down and I went with the counsellor who was leading the retreat and we went out into the bush and I read this out to the winds and I just both owned it and let it go at the same time. It was like, again, this whole sense of the guilt around divorce went, any shame I felt went, because I needed to say, I'm a divorced woman. I divorced my husband because I needed to. And that was such a, not only a freeing thing, but it was a truth saying, this is my truth. And wasn't about just accepting it or living with it, was owning it and taking it and saying, this is my truth, this is my story. And not
placing that blame on somebody else, but taking that ownership of it and saying, I did this.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and it was more than, it was having the right level of responsibility as well. Yeah. You know, you talked about that, Jenny, because, you know, although I was the one who instigated the divorce, you know, most of our listeners, if they haven't been divorced, they know somebody who has, and they know that it's never just one party in the partnership that causes it, but one person generally is the instigator. And so they bear that responsibility of being the one who leaves. And you've just got to work your way through that, however that journey's shape takes for you.
Right.
But of course, you do develop a superpower, you know, because unfortunately our stories can keep us stuck. Like I could have stayed stuck as a divorced woman and labelled myself, had that story around my life. But it really came home to me, funnily enough, only last year when I was privileged to be part of the Fear to Freedom project with Adrian Kwan, who interviewed a number of women around their stories of moving from fear to freedom. And as I went through that, I shared with Adrian the number of times that people had said to me, Bron, you're so brave, you know, because I'd left the marriage and then I joined up with the Salvation Army and did a whole, you know, reinvented my life. And then I went off to Nauru and did all of these things, and people would tell me over and over again. And it was only as I articulated that with Adrian last year that I realised, hello, Bron, courage is your superpower.
Wow.
Because I've had to face stuff over and over and over again and not run away, but face it and then move on.
Isn't it the truth? I mean, courage, I mean, is one of the big things, Bron, I mean, that, you know, really sets us up for taking that our own responsibility. And a lot of times we just lack that courage to do that. And I'm just so impressed. I mean, that's a big revelation right there.
It is. It was wonderful. It was wonderful because it was something that I knew, but I hadn't actually articulated out like that. So I thought that was fantastic. But I've often said that, you know, I've been brave because quite often there's no other choice. You know, if you're going to make something of your life, when life deals out stuff that you don't expect, you can either curl up in a ball and have a pity party and stay the victim, or you can, you know, be brave. And bravery is just doing things in the face of fear. You know, It's not that you aren't afraid. But
Exactly.
Right.
But and it's realizing too, I've probably said this on every show that we've done on the air, and people might be tired of hearing it, but I want people to really take this in, is that I live by an affirmation that my life is a perfect example of synchronicity and flow. And it really ties into what we're talking about here, because we are presented with things in our lives, when you look at each one of our backstories, that we need to go through in order to learn and grow into the person that we're meant to be, so that we can bring our superpower to the world and help others. And so when great things are going on in our lives, we should savor every moment of that and enjoy it, because eventually that'll come to an end. And then when we're faced with a challenge, or we're in a situation where we need to have courage and be brave and face our fears, we're also presented with that, because we need to learn and grow in that situation. And so the quicker that we can embrace that fear and be brave and be courageous, the quicker that we can learn from it, so that we don't repeat that same experience over and over again. And so many people in their lives keep repeating, if they look back over their life, they can see this repetition of, I go through the same bad relationship over and over again, just with a different person, or I keep losing my job, or I keep whatever it is. But they can see this repetition because they haven't yet had the courage to face it and learn from it.
Yeah, it actually even sounds like, whenever you're saying about that, I remember back as a kid watching The Wizard of Oz, and the lion who was looking for courage. And it took a long time. I mean, you think about this fierce lion, man, that was so cowardly, but looking for that courage. And I think that's where we all are, in a way. And this is where you help people out to understand that if they take that responsibility, that they will then be brave, that courage will come out, and they will shine, and they can then be themselves, just like you have been able to be yourself in the face of all the different adversity out there and that you've went through.
Yeah, and I think it's so important that we know that we don't have to be stuck by or anchored. I use the term anchors and sails. We don't have to be anchored by the things of our past. And so often we are, you talked about, being stuck, doing the same things, repeating the same life events. And sometimes it's actually when we see that, we start to see that pattern in ourselves, that's actually an indicator to us that we need to do something in that area. And that's one of the things that I love, is when people come to me, often with absolute tears of frustration, because they know they need to change and they want to change, they just don't know how to do it. And I'm just about jumping up and down inside going, yay, because I know this person. Because I know they have the keys to move forward. I just have to help them find them.
Absolutely. And you, by the way, do an amazing job helping them find them. So for those of you out there, Bron works with many of our clients, and she is changing lives every single day doing this. And it is amazing to see how people are transformed after going through this process with her. And so for those of you that are interested in finding Bron, you can find her through us on our Facebook page, Craig and Jenny D, which many of our listeners I know have already been to, and you can find a link to reach out to Bron through there. And I know that she is just changing lives around the entire world, and that's what's so fun about this, is that to have coaches in that work with us that are all over the world makes it so enjoyable for us to know that we can just touch lives anywhere that we are all around us. So Bron, I really thank you for being with us this morning. We can't thank you enough for being here.
Yes, thank you so much.
It's been a privilege. I've just loved it. Thank you.
Well, and we will talk to you very soon. In the meantime, we are going to take another music break here, which was just so appropriate. We have got I Wish That I Can Turn Back the Clock by Johnny Hates Jazz.
Oh, the brilliant Johnny Hates Jazz and Turn Back the Clock. It's the All Day Special on Expat Radio with Craig and Jenny D live in Pennsylvania this morning. And our fantastic guest out in Australia, Bron Williams. What a lovely lady. It's 12:56 already. Right, we're going back live to the guys this afternoon. I keep forgetting what time it is.
What's that?
I keep forgetting what time it is. I don't know if it's morning, noon, or night. I keep going through every time slot I can think of.
You're just so busy over there getting your workout in for today.
Oh, I don't know if I'm coming or going. Anyway.
Pretty soon you're going to be doing your radio show on a treadmill.
Oh, well, that's the other thing. I'm going to try ironing as well, because apparently if you keep your arm, one of the best aerobic things I'm going to be doing, going to get a treadmill, I'll do me running, and I'll have an ironing board either side of me so I can get 2 irons on the go and do a couple of shirts at the same time, see how that works.
That sounds really dangerous to me, David.
I know, but it'll make me concentrate. Trust me, I won't even move. I'll just keep running on the spot. If that iron drops, my foot's going to get flattened and burnt alive. So
when you burn holes through all your shirts, don't ever say that I told you to do that.
Oh, I won't be wearing them. I don't wear them over here. That's the thing. I just have polo tops and a t-shirt and go topless half the time when it's that hot. You don't wear them. I've got about 16 suits in the wardrobe. They've never been worn since I moved here. You don't use them.
Well, hey, who needs them on radio? That's the beautiful thing.
Exactly. If you could see me now, pajamas. That's what I'm in. I'm not.
I love it. I mean, it's like, listen, we were in finance before, and we've got a zillion suits. I got a bunch of suits myself, and I don't need to put them on, and it just feels so good.
Oh,
well, heck, 2 weeks ago, we were actually sitting in bed doing this show when we were down in Georgia. So
I know. I know. I didn't want to tell the listeners that, because we could have gone onto a whole new spectrum there, and I thought I've got.
That could have been a whole new topic, but today we're in the office, so it's good.
Thank God for that. The panic.
So the question is, David, what backstory are we going to turn into your superpower?
Oh, I don't know. I'll have to have a think of one. To be honest. I'll think of one for next week.
There you go. I like it.
That'll be my own work.
I like it. But yeah, what a good time with Bron this morning. Isn't she amazing?
What a lovely lady.
She is fantastic, and we are so delighted to have her in our lives. And for those of you that may have missed it, you can join in on our Facebook page for Craig and Jenny D, and make sure that you check Bron out, because she is just absolutely amazing, and she's changing lives all over the world, helping people to identify what their backstory is and how they can turn it into their superpower. Mm-hmm. And I'm telling you what, Craig and I have done a lot of mindset work over the years. We work with somebody on a regular basis. We do this work, and Bron is one of the people that we work with. And some of the stuff that she has taken me through, rearranging the furniture in my head, has been life-changing for me in relationships that I have in my lives. I cannot thank Bron enough.
Brilliant. We wanted to,
thank you.
I was going to say, wait till Bron, you're going to get more inquiries than you've ever had before now. I'm sure you're going to get... I mean, the weird thing is, right, I'll tell you now, that we've got an app going out into China. There's a lot of expats out there. There's over 1 million apparently out in China, and we've just signed up a deal with UK TV for this app that's going to be going out there. And obviously, with you being so close to China where you are, I mean, I don't know, you're closer than we are anyway. But you might be getting, you could be getting inquiries from China and Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai, all sorts. So hang tight.
She won't have time to get on the motorbike anymore.
Mm-hmm. I will always make time for that.
She'll be doing her calls on the motorbike. I can hear it now.
Oh my God! Can you imagine that? Just put a phone in the sidecar. If you get a secretary in get a sidecar on the bike and get a secretary.
Oh my goodness! I can just see. I can envision that. I see that picture. Oh, that would be awesome.
Oh, it could be like the Backstory road trips. You can take your clients out in the sidecar.
Goodness me.
Oh dear.
I can see that helmet. Okay, and those big goggles that whenever you're in that sidecar, what you should be wearing.
I think, David, you ought to be the first person in that sidecar.
Oh my God, you won't get me in a sidecar, trust me. I was bad enough on the back of a motorbike years ago when I did it once. Never again. Gordon Bennett. Especially when you haven't got control of it. And I remember going to an airport in Greece to go and meet someone, and a friend of mine gave me a seater on the back of this bike, and we didn't have hats on. It was in the 90s, and we didn't have helmets on, and we're going down these gravel roads, and I'm thinking, my life's going to be gone in any minute now, because we're sliding everywhere, and I thought, any minute now, I'm going to come off this, and there's going to be nothing left of us. I mean, we had shorts on and a T-shirt in the pitch darkness trying to go and meet this flight coming in. Crazy it was. Won't do that again.
Yeah, I don't blame you. I don't know about getting on the back of somebody else's bike.
Oh, no, never again. It won't be happening again. Anyway, we're running out of time. Anyway, we've got to go to the news. So
it goes by so quick. It's been fun, everybody.
We love you guys.
Guys, keep uploading your norm. We'll talk to you in 2 weeks.
Before we go, we've got to tell everyone that you're looking at doing coming on every Wednesday now, aren't you?
We are, yeah. So, we'd love to hear everybody's feedback, but we have gotten so much interest and we've got so many people listening in here and so many things to cover. Yeah, we're thinking about going to every Wednesday morning.
Right, brilliant stuff. Right, guys, so we'll speak to you next week. And Bronwyn, many thanks for coming on today. You've been an absolute star.
Pleasure.
Thanks, Bron.
Thanks, Bron. Thanks, David.
Yeah.
Take care, guys. All the best.